Welcome to The Straight Stitch, a podcast about sewing and other fiber arts. This is episode 18, and my name is Janet Szabo. I'll be your guide as we explore all things sewing. We've warmed up a little bit here in northwest Montana from our low of minus 30 Fahrenheit when I woke up last Saturday morning. Now we are in the mid 30s and we're heading up into the lower 40s, it looks like, by next week. And I know some people would say that that's still cold, but it's much warmer than minus 30 below. So we'll take it. I want to jump right into this week's episode because I have an interview with someone that I have known for quite a long time. My guest today is Melanie Knight, who owns Starry Night Design. My husband and I moved to Montana in September of 1993 with our almost one-year-old daughter. My husband was working construction and got to know Melanie's dad, who was also in construction. And then we got to know Melanie's family, her mom, Judy, and her two younger sisters. And one thing that you might not know is that in 1994, in June of 1994, I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. I had been sick for about 6 weeks and no one could figure out what was going on. And finally, I went back to the doctor and I said, "You have got to figure out what's happening here. I'm really sick. Something is seriously wrong." So they did a blood test and the doctor called my husband and me back into the office and he said, "You have leukemia and you need to be on the first plane out of here tomorrow morning because we can't treat you here." So I chose to fly back to Cleveland where I had grown up and be treated at the Cleveland Clinic. So I was in and out of the clinic for the next 6 months, having 3 rounds of chemotherapy. And fortunately, I had a textbook case of leukemia that responded well to the chemotherapy that I had been given, and I've been in remission ever since. At the time, though, I couldn't take my daughter with me to Cleveland. I was so sick that I could hardly get myself on and off the plane, and I had to change planes twice, getting from Montana to Cleveland. So Melanie's mom, Judy, stepped up and said, "We will take Mariah, our daughter, we will take Mariah and keep her during the day when your husband is working." So that was just such an incredibly generous offer. Judy was homeschooling her kids, and my husband would drop Mariah off in the morning and pick her up in the afternoon, and Mariah got to spend the day with Judy and her girls. They took care of her for about a month until my husband could fly to Cleveland with Mariah, and then she stayed in Cleveland with me until the fall, and then came back to Montana with her dad and stayed with Judy and her family again for another couple of weeks. Sadly, Judy passed away last January, but I did run into her periodically in town, and I remember seeing her at the grocery store a couple of years ago, and we were catching up on what the girls were all doing, and she was very excited to tell me that Melanie had a sewing business down in Corvallis, Montana, which is about an hour south of Missoula. So when I started the podcast, I knew right away that Melanie was one of the first people that I wanted to interview. So let's jump right in. My guest today is Melanie Knight, and she is owner of Starry Night Design here in Montana. And welcome to the podcast, Melanie. I'll have you describe what your company does.
Hi, I'm Melanie Knight. My company makes mostly leather baby shoes. We started in 2008, just as a very small, like in the kitchen business. But yes, we've expanded over the last few years. We do now do sizes all the way up to adult sizes and everything in between, from newborn, like tiny babies, all the way up to toddlers and bigger kids and adult ones. We mostly have a soft soled suede bottom, but we have additional soles that people can add on the bottoms to make them more of an outdoor shoe or slipper. And we also make like kids accessories out of leather, bows and little kids purses that we sell, like styles similar to our baby shoes, and so it all kind of complements each other.
Now, I need to tell people that I have known you since I think you were 12. It's been a while.
Yeah,
And back then,
I just turned 41, so
so that
it's
would
been
be
a while.
about right because we moved here 30 years ago. And
Yeah.
your dad worked with my husband in construction, and that's how we got to know your family. So back then, even then, you were very creative. You were doing stuff with polymer clay, and I was
Mm-hmm.
amazed at, at what you were coming up with even back then. So I ran into your mother in the grocery store a couple years ago, and she couldn't wait to tell me all about your sewing business. So I wasn't surprised to find out that you had started something like that. So
Aw,
who
well,
taught you to sew? Did your mom teach you to sew?
my mom did teach me to sew some. We had a sewing machine and we were homeschooled. So we had done a lot of different little projects when I was younger. I know I made, like sketched out a doll and made a doll, and maybe some smaller projects, but she wasn't necessarily an expert seamstress. She kind of just learned as she was going as well, but she definitely gave me the basics to get started with sewing.
So how did you come up with the idea to start this business?
Well, my oldest son, he was 2 when I first had made the very first pair of shoes. And I was pregnant with my second son. We had bought like name brand leather, like the soft soled leather baby shoes. We were introduced to him when he was like probably about 6 or 9 months old, and loved them and had bought them all the way up till he was about 2. And then I had been doing real estate just because I kind of fell into that, because my mother-in-law had some properties, and so I had gotten started doing that, and things kind of just with the that was like the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. So things had kind of just started to be that severe decline. So we had moved back to Kalispell, and I was just in kind of a weird, like in between place of not knowing what I was doing. And we were not very established, and I was pregnant. And so I just went to this upholstery shop and had bought some scraps of leather and just had made him a pair of the little shoes and was really excited about it. And then that Christmas made a bunch of pairs for people, like presents and stuff. And then by the next spring, I started doing the markets up in Whitefish and selling. At this time I just had like a little machine in my kitchen and would do it while my second son was just like laying in the little bouncy chair next to me. And everything was hand cut, just like small batches of the shoes, but I had come up with a few little designs to put on them. I think trees and maybe bison, or was doing at that time. but they were very, very rudimentary. I ended up selling quite a few of them, though. I think the first time I went to the market, I had sold like 10 pairs. And so it really encouraged me to keep going. And I kept going at it. And then that fall, my dad and his wife, gave me a loan to buy a walking foot leather machine, the artisan machine. And so then, I mean, from then on, I just, I was like, I guess this is what I'm doing. uh, that was in 2008 that it kind of all started. But the first few years was definitely pretty part-time, I would say, more seasonal, just doing markets and things like that. And the internet stuff wasn't as good as it is now, as far as like being able to easily set up the websites, and even Etsy was pretty rudimentary back then. So yeah, I mean, the first few years were definitely more of just like a uh, part-time business when in mostly the summer months, like the markets and doing farmers markets. And then we had moved back down to Corvallis. And so I was doing the markets in Missoula for a few years. So that's kind of how it started, just with an idea, and kind of grew from there.
So you're not still doing it all by yourself.
I am not doing it by myself anymore.
And at what point did you decide you needed to hire people?
Well, when things started to get a lot more consistent, and I had started slowly to take on some wholesale, and also just like getting Etsy. I think I was just on Etsy at that point, maybe maybe I had started my own website probably around 2015. I think I had started my own website, or 2014, and then was also doing that and Etsy, and then doing the markets and some shows, and then had started working in a little bit of wholesale. So that was when, let's see, 2015 is when my contract seamstress, or 2000, let's see, 2014, she started with me. So she's still with me now. She has her own studio and has always worked independently, and kind of she trained herself to do a lot of the production sewing. And we still do a lot in house, but she's kind of one of the backbone of the business, as far as being able to have the production for the assembly. And then in the studio, we have I have 4 employees, one full-time mostly full-time seamstress, Hilka, and she's been with me for about 7 years. And then Sam, she works part-time and she does most of the cutting. We have 2 die cut machines, and so we do the cutting in the studio. And then Jen just works part-time doing some of the soling. Like I was saying, with the we have the additional soles. So there's a lot of gluing that needs to be done with that. So she does a lot of that from home. And then I have, I call her like my shipping manager, but she does, Jolene. She flips all of them, tags them for all the wholesale orders, like bags, all the wholesale, and then does all the online shipping. And she does a lot of that from her own home. She's an employee, but she can work mostly from her own house. Um, so 4 ladies that are employees and 1 contract seamstress, Alicia. So yeah, I really am lucky to have such a good team. I mean, Jolene has been with me, I think, 8 or 9 years, and Sam, 7 years, Jen, I think 8 years. So I really have gotten a great team of ladies that have been able to support the business and keep things flowing, and get in a really consistent routine where we kind of know what each season is going to bring and how busy it'll be or not busy. So it's really nice to have that stable employees that are going to be there year to year.
Yeah, that's huge. It's
Yeah, definitely.
that and knowing what your cash flow is going to be when you're
uh that that is always variable.
yeah, when you're self-employed, it's always a question. Well, it sounds like you've got a
Mhm.
great setup.
Yeah, it is really an awesome, and it's all in the down. I'm talking to you upstairs, but like right under where we are is the where everybody is working. So it is nice for me to be able to just kind of walk out the front door and to the downstairs for work. So it's been really convenient over the years to have it from home.
So do you still do most of the designing then and come up with the shoe styles?
I do all the designing, picking the colors, picking the styles, the designs. If we come up with new, like something new, that's always, I always am the one like doing it, but I do get some input from my employees, and like the ones that are in the studio. I mean, I bounce ideas off of them, and we'll do samples of new designs or new products, and not always is it something we keep. So we've experimented with things over the years that have come and gone, and then some of our styles just stick and they're on there forever. Yeah, I do all the designing, but I am open to input. And I do like everybody jokes with me because we always have to come up with names for the colors. And I am kind of hard-headed. So it is hard for me to like take other people's suggestions. And usually I don't use them, but I do try to be open to like other people's ideas. And we come up with some, like this spring we have some new things coming out that are like some new little flower designs, and we had worked on that a couple days in the studio, just kind of coming up with like trying out a few different things. So I mean, Hilka was doing all the samples and I was just kind of like laying it out. So I mean, it is a group effort for sure of like making the final product for sure.
What was your biggest challenge? Was it scaling up? Was it something else?
Yeah, I mean, the consistency, like for scaling up and having the employees, like having to have that consistency, I mean, is still definitely a challenge. Like with the economy and everything, how it's been, like, um, I mean, COVID for us was like an amazing year. So everything since then just kind of feels like a downer. And it's, the economy definitely has affected our business, I think. And like all that money, that cash flow people were getting with COVID and all the online shopping, really helped that part of our business and the online. But wholesale was way, way slower during that period. Uh, but for us, that was a lot more profitable. So we had less people working during that period, and it was mostly all online sales. And um, so that was nice, but yeah, so since then, just trying to see like what's going to be the consistency of like the market, and having the wholesale like does give us a lot of consistency with the the orders because we do have to make everything to order. So we, always pretty much if we have orders in, we have things to do, but we don't have like warehouses with our product in it. So we're kind of just having to work for what is being given to us for online or wholesale. And so if it's slower, even if we want to work, we can't always we don't want to work ahead because that's not how we do our business. We don't have a ton of back stock. We'll have extra leathers, but because we have so many styles and colors and designs, like the options that people could order would be like infinite. And so it just doesn't make sense. And the ease of like being able to put the orders like together, it would just be, we don't have the facilities to be able to like have everything organized in huge shelves and things like that. It's more just like batch by batch.
Nowadays, some people really want custom stuff. They don't want, I bought this and it
Mm-hmm.
came on a boat from China. I've seen your products around Montana. I was in the store in
Yeah.
Pilsen and saw them. And when I saw the tag
Oh
that
yeah.
had your name on it, I that was the first time I had seen your product and I thought, "Oh, this is what her mom was talking about." So it was fun to be able to
Oh
see them in person. Do you sell outside of Montana too?
yes. We're on mostly where we do our wholesale, like how we sell our wholesale product is on Fair. It's a wholesale website for handmade products. And we like on our database of like how many customers it says we have, it's probably about 400 to 500. And so that, not that all those people are ordering every month or every year, but we have, that's how, we have probably a few hundred current clients on Fair. So we have everywhere around the country. Probably most states have, maybe at least 20 to 30 states have our product. And then a few other countries, but mostly in the US.
Did you ever think that this would be what you would be doing?
I didn't necessarily think that it would keep going this long. I am really happy that it has, but yeah, I never thought that I would be able to make enough money doing a business, like a handmade business, to be able to like support a family or anything like that. So it is amazing. And I am so happy that like this is how my life has worked out. I never could have imagined that that would. I mean, maybe when I was like 10 or 12 doing the stuff for the farmers market back then, I could have imagined it. But as I got older and things started to seem more complicated, I never could have imagined that it would have worked out this well.
That's cool. Do you sew for fun or do you have other hobbies?
Uh, I occasionally sew for fun. I had started doing these like leather mountain murals a couple years ago and gave them for Christmas presents. So I would say that's probably the last like for fun project I did sewing. I've done some things with the kids for school projects over the years, but and I always like every time they have like a big project, I'm like, oh, we could do that in leather. But it's that's probably like the most like creativity outside of my business that I do for fun. I have, because my sewing machines are just the walking foot, more like the industrial, it's not, I don't have like an actual just like for fabric sewing machine. So I'll like patch things for the kids or Brad, but it's not, the machine isn't really for doing any like detailed sewing. So no, I mean, the what I do for fun is probably just try to be outside or I have a lot of like wildflower gardens outside, and I really love doing like not necessarily gardening, like we don't have like a vegetable garden really right now, but we had moved over to this place a few years ago, and I just had gotten on this wildflower kick because there was exposed dirt places and weeds, and so now we have just some insane like wildflower patches around. So that's been my like hobby outside of work, is probably the like gardening and just kind of trying to get this place, like the landscaping, everything just more appealing and more wild. I want it to be more like just a jungle.
Oh, sure. That sounds beautiful. So how can you do sell both online and wholesale? So if people want
Yeah.
to buy from you, where would they go?
So our website is starrynightdesign.com. And we also have an Etsy shop, and that is starrynightdesign.etsy.com. And then we have Faire, which is the wholesale site. It's spelled FAIRE, and our website on there is starrynightdesign.faire.com. So, and if you're looking to purchase for a like small children's store or gift shop, or even a bigger store, we do sell to places that the orders will be like a few hundred pairs, but even we do down to like 10 and 12 pair orders for smaller companies that can't afford to put in a huge order right at once. So yeah, if that would be the three places that you can purchase our product. We also are on Instagram. We post on there a lot. That's probably where we'll post the most as far as like sales or new products. And that's Starry Night Design, and that's at Instagram. And it's Starry Night with a K. That's one thing that people don't always realize, but it's StarrynightDesign.com is where you can find our products.
And that's because your last name is Knight.
Yes. Yeah. That is Melanie Knight. Yep.
I will make sure that I put links for all of those in the show notes so that people can find you. So is
Okay,
there
great.
anything else you want to share?
I don't think so. I just yeah, if you have a dream of doing something, as long as it's a product that people can use and can buy, that's a useful product, that's probably like the best niche to get into, is something that people can keep buying again and again. So I'm really thankful I landed on this opportunity to make something that I feel passionate about still, and it's been really fun over the years. So
That's awesome. Well, thanks for being on the podcast. It's really good to connect
yeah,
with you again. So
thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you another time. I hope you enjoyed that visit with Melanie. Links to all of her websites and Etsy stores and Instagram account will be in the show notes, so check those out. I'll spend a little time now talking about some of the sewing stuff that I've been working on. I'm still trying to get a quilt top quilted for my sister. I try to work on it an hour or two every day on the Q20. It's coming along. It'll get done. I've been enjoying working on my Robert Mahar embroidery project in the evening. I'm doing one of his botanical, anatomical, medical drawings. I'm working on the Blackberry Heart, and it's a lot of fun. I haven't done any clothing sewing as much as I have been going back and tinkering with some of my tried and true patterns because I had something of an epiphany this week. I was working on a top and really struggling to get the fit correct around my waist and my hips. And I started thinking about my body shape, and what I've always thought of myself as is something of an hourglass because I'm fairly balanced. My shoulders and my hips are about the same width. My waist is defined. When I took my sewing class in Tacoma in November, the instructor there pronounced me a rectangle, which I thought was a little bit odd. I've always thought of rectangle body shapes as being pretty straight with not very much of a defined waist. I still think I fall into the hourglass category, but now I've determined that I belong to a subcategory of the hourglass, which is called an 8, a figure 8. If you have ever put on a dress with a belt and been told that you look like a sausage tied in the middle, and my sister said that to me one time when I was a teenager, then you probably fall into the category of the 8. One of the determining features of an 8 is high hip bones. If your hip bones are at or even above the level of your belly button, you are probably an 8. I have very high hip bones. I have very high hip curves. So what happens is, just below my well-defined waist, my hips flare out. And the widest part of my hips is up near my waist. It's not 6 to 8 inches down. Again, this explains so much of the frustration that I have had over the years trying to find ready-to-wear clothing that fits me. The fact that I have high hips that flare out and then go pretty much straight down means that if I try to wear low-rise or mid-rise pants, there's nothing to anchor them in place. And indeed, when I've tried to wear low-rise or mid-rise pants, they always end up falling down, and it drives me nuts. When I put on a pair of high-rise pants, and I have a long rise to begin with, when I put on a pair of high-rise pants, they fit nicely around my waist and they don't fall down. This means also that I tend to avoid anything with a defined waist. Peplums, forget it. I look like an idiot in peplums. Dresses with belts are a no-go. I tend to gravitate toward tunic length tops that skim my waistline. And it's because nothing ever fits in that area. And even though I'm now able to make my own clothing, the location of my waistline means that the proportions are off. So even if I lower the waistline on my clothing, it still looks weird. I am all about working with your figure features because I refuse to call them flaws. They are figure features, and once you've determined what your figure features are and how you can best show them off or minimize them, then that's what you need to do. So, knowing this, I went back through a lot of my patterns and adjusted the waistlines on them so that I did not have this issue with clothing not fitting around my waistline. When I'm shopping for tops now, or I'm shopping for patterns to make tops, I will know that I look best in tunic length tops that skim my waistline area, and those are what I will wear. Along those lines, I got out Berta 6146, which is a pattern that I had purchased a couple of months ago. It's got two views, and I actually purchased it for the view on the left side of the pattern envelope, view A, which is a blouse pattern that has a ruffle around the neck and a little drawstring tie. I bought it because I had found a similar top at Kohl's last spring, and I liked the way that it looked on me, except for the fact that it was about 4 inches too short. Oh, the oft-heard refrain, everything is too short on me. So I bought the pattern intending to make a top like the one that I had seen at Kohl's, except one that was long enough for me. I don't tuck things in, obviously, because I don't like to accentuate my waistline and make myself look like a sausage tied in the middle. View B of Burda 6146 is similar. It's a V-neck with 3/4 length sleeves that are full and end in a banded cuff. Every time I looked at View B, though, on that pattern envelope, even though the pattern called for a woven fabric, I kept seeing it in a stable knit, like a Ponte. So the two views are basically the same top with a few variations between them. I traced off what I needed for both tops, and I decided to try making View B in a stable knit. I didn't make it out of a Ponte. I had a heavyweight jersey in my stash that I thought would work. And I think this must be a Walmart remnant because it's teal. And I wouldn't willingly buy teal because teal is one of the colors that I can usually find in ready to wear. And I'm sick and tired of it because it's one of the colors that I can usually find in ready to wear. And my closet is full of it. But I had this length of fabric. And so I decided to run up View B in the fabric. And amazingly enough, even though it's a stable knit, in a pattern that calls for a woven fabric, it works. I would probably take out the bust darts if I were going to do it again in a knit because knits are stretchy enough that you don't need the bust darts. But I like the way it fits. I love the sleeves on it, and the V-neck is perfect. I can see this being used as the basis for some variations. It lends itself very well to pattern hacking. In another month or two, I'm probably going to start getting out some of my woven fabrics and making up View A so that I have some dressy blouses to wear to church. I should also note that Burda 6146 requires that some of the sewing be done on the sewing machine. I've gotten used to running up knit tops very quickly on my serger, and I describe it as getting tired of eating Twinkies. I want to sink my teeth into some projects that require a bit more time, a bit more care, a bit more thoughtfulness, some additional techniques. Burda 6146 required me to do some sewing on my sewing machine because I couldn't do the entire thing on the serger. And I think that that's important to note, and it's important to know how to do. Not everyone has a serger. You can sew knits on a sewing machine. There is nothing wrong with using a sewing machine for construction. I'm going to be teaching a class on this later in the spring, and I'll probably do a podcast episode at some point about tips and techniques for sewing knits on sewing machines. I'm still kicking around the idea of making the Oxbow tote by Anna Graham of Noodlehead. She has released 2 YouTube videos. She has a sew-along for the Oxbow tote. I've watched both of them. I'm trying to decide what fabric I want to use, whether I want to make it out of a quilting cotton or possibly a waxed canvas. I'm still letting that one percolate a little bit through my brain, and we'll see what happens. I think next week is going to be another interview show. We'll see how the schedule falls out this week, but right now that's the plan. Thank you to the people who sent me emails this week. I always love getting listener feedback, and I got some very cool emails from some of you. So thanks for that. And at some point, I may have a listener feedback show or a listener question show. You can get more information about the podcast. The show notes are at thestraightstitchpodcast.com. And you just have to navigate to the episode that you're interested in. You can email me at janet@janetzabo.com. My blog is at that website at janetzabo.com, along with links to my knitting website. And as always, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. That really does help me to get to a wider audience, or share the podcast with some of your sewing friends. I do have a Facebook page for the podcast if you want to follow that. I'm trying to navigate my way around Instagram, but Instagram is being kind of snooty and giving me a lot of problems. So as soon as I get those straightened out, I may be posting a little bit more at Instagram. Until next time, I hope you have a great week and you get to go sew something.